Hello everyone, welcome to today's Proving Grounds. Today we're talking about some naughty people, the criminal goals invite only for the PlayStation Vita or PlayStation TV, as it is compatible. This was published by NIS America, and a lot of people were pretty shocked by it, considering the context of the game. So, the premise of the game is that a group of delinquents who are on the edge of being unsalvageable, unsavable, are sent to hell and go through a trial program to find redemption and reincarnate with hopeful new lives. You have a pretty lively party, and it is important to note, for those who are hardcore Japanese importers, that the Vita version is not the original version. The original version was on the PSP. Now, the PSP ended kind of abruptly with two characters being left kind of in the dust. The Vita version picks up after that still, with two new party members being those two new characters, with a new final boss and a new secret dungeon with super bosses filled in it. For those who are extra, well, mortalists, I guess you could say. So essentially, out of all the goals, you got Wan, who's a tank type, Tomo, who is a heavy melee damage dealer, and beware, I may butcher some of these names. Sakura, who is like a monk damage dealer. Shin is a buffing MMO type character. And then Alice is the mage, heavy mage damage dealer. Yoko is the healer, and Kisagag, the blonde haired chick with the sword, is kind of a average knight type with a lot of poison attached to her. The additional two new killers, who I ain't gonna name for spoiler reasons, one's kind of like a wed mage, and the other is kind of a backup damage / buffer, if I was to label them all. But you get a pretty hefty crew of characters to go through the dungeons. Now, the dungeons themselves ain't primarily much special. A few of them have gimmicks, but overall, you're just looking for the exit to go up, to continue climbing up from the bottom floor of the dungeon. Usually, your biggest things are just looking for something in general, or having to fight certain enemies laid around the floor, usually the most difficult things. Now, the higher floors usually have you do more stuff than the lower ones, though. And then after so many floors, you'll run into a boss. So, you, the main character, who does never participate in combat, you are supposed to be an instructor that's going to help these girls overcome their wrongful ways and hopefully be reborn into proper lives, is the idea. Now, combat in the game it's not traditional. While I would say the game is incredibly grindy in a traditional Japanese RPG old school way, there's a lot of grinding if you want to get through all of the content, especially the new end, and the super bosses. But the actual combat itself is a little different. It has its ups and downs. When you first hear it, you might think it's an immediate down. Each of the 4 goals, you have a party up the 4 goals, and you have a traditional HP and MP system. Each goal will choose something from attack to any of their abilities, or bond abilities, which are with multiple characters. And they have to be in the party at the time to have those activate. But they are chosen by the game, not you. So you could say have one character recommending 3 of the goals attack, one wants to use a special ability, and maybe the other 2 want to use a bond ability. And you'll have to choose between those. Now, that has some disadvantages, obviously, because you can't have them do exactly what you want them to do. And there will be a few situations where you'd be like, oh, I need that super move to finish off this boss and that. Because some moves are quite devastating. And I think that's one of the reasons they designed it that way. But some of the advantages are, like, say, Wan. Wan, like I said, is designed to be a tank-type character. So when an enemy is usually going to do something very painful, Wan will actually recommend to defend or later on use a super move she has that superly defends everyone. Without Wan in your party, actually none of your characters can defend. She's the only one that can make them defend. But she will always bring up defend in smart situations of where everyone's lives can be in grave danger. At least in my experience, personally. I haven't had or never recommend at least defending. There are a lot of status effects like confusion and paralyze, poison. There's also a special one called where you can't switch. Like a few more modern RPGs and a few other RPGs such like Final Fantasy X, but Fire 4 and that, this has a switching system. So all characters are always available in every battle, you just have to switch. Now, you can switch one character and use one item per turn, and it doesn't consume the goal's ability to do something. So you could always be like, this is a bad situation, I need to swap out character. So everyone is always at your disposal. The game is pretty forgiving on allowing you to get back to safe spots. There are items that will let you get back to a safe spot to rest and buy items, and Wan will eventually learn an ability that outright just avoids all combat while it's activated, which you can abuse that like hell to get around very easily too. Which is useful in the final super dungeon if you decide to do such, because it does not let you teleport back to the safe spot. Now, probably where I would say this game lacks a lot is there's no customization of the characters. There's no equipment system or anything. Instead, you have a motivation system. Now, you have multiple categories of motivation. You usually get item to do a new type of motivation after a boss of a dungeon. And each one is a different type of minigame. You use the touchscreen of the Vita or the touchpad options of the PS4 controller. So basically, depending on the game you got, you can use the analog sticks. Yeah, you use the analog sticks, not the touchpad when you're using the PlayStation TV. But you will have to grab and properly do the minigame. Each one is a little different. Some require a little movement, grabbing. It depends on what. Each one has a different set of rules. But depending on your score, you'll get an experience score at the end. Most of them are really easy to maximize, so it's pretty easy to get through the motivation. But the motivations have a CM cost. CM you get from battle as well. CM is basically your currency, so you use it to motivate, and you also use it to go into the shop. So it's a dual-purpose currency. And some of the higher level motivations do cost a lot, so that's why I say the motivation system is essentially kind of replacing your equipment. Now, what's mostly locked behind motivation are abilities, but there are some pacifist skills that also will help them, like increase defense and HP up and stuff, depending on each character. Then as you go through the dungeons, the goals will also have requests for you to do, which are little quests that usually involve backtracking to older floors to find or defeat something, and completing a chain of a goal's entire wishes will increase benefits, like lowering the MP cost, the CM cost, motivation, and that. But overall, it's pretty much a traditional RPG with a few little differences. Graphically, the game looks pretty alright. I mean, it's all 2D. You don't get any real 3D of any kind. It's pretty simplistic 2D. It has an interesting art style to it. A lot of the monsters, though, isn't too many monster variety, is probably what I would complain the most. There's a pretty light touch of different monsters that get reused, recolored, and adjusted slightly. So for that, can I really recommend Criminal Goals? Criminal Goals, I would say, if you like grindy RPGs, because yes, there are people who like grindy RPGs, because sometimes they're multitasking people, or they just like it a bit more simplistic. But if you like grindy RPGs, you like a linear dungeon design, you don't want a gigantic open world. If you want just something simple that you can maybe sit down for 30 minutes or an hour on a car trip or something to kill some time. Obviously, this is a very fan-servicey game. That's pretty much unavoidable to point out. This is very fan-servicey, so if you're into waifu culture, skimpy goals and such, this is also something for you. If you're looking for a really deep story, there's a few interesting story segments with a few of the characters. Each character, you'll eventually learn and understand what they sinned about in the mortal life. A few of them interesting, a few of them are quite bizarre, and a few of them are just Japan. But overall, I did enjoy Criminal Goals. I platinumed it. I did everything in it, which is pretty unusual. I don't usually do that too much. I have mixed feelings about it. I hope the sequel shows out to be a lot better. But at this point, let us talk about the end of the story and spoilers and such on that. But I would recommend getting Criminal Goals invite only for the Vita if you can find it for a reasonable price. I would probably not pay more than probably $50 just because it's a little harder to get. Sadly, the last time I looked, my internet's down right now, so I can't check what the current price going for, but it's a little pricey to get the English version. It's not super common, so I would use any sources you have to try and look for a good deal on one, because I wouldn't waste more than $50 just for it being a little hard. But if I was going to say the value of the content you get, I'd probably say $39.99 is probably the most I would go in that. But like I said, the physical version's a little hard to get without being a little pricey the last time I looked. So, because it was a limited physical release by NIS, it was something, essentially, if you didn't pre-order it, you were pretty much missed out. And I believe Criminal Goals 2 suffered the exact same fate, I believe. So, anyway, with my thoughts out there, if you have any questions or anything, please leave a comment down below. And with that said, let us move on to what I think about the ending plot, spoilers, bosses, and stuff like that. So, essentially, you find out there's a renegade girl who's a part of the original storyline on the PSP that's sabotaging the program, and apparently she was a part of a group that failed to succeed in a tower, and she basically went crazy and decided basically make everyone fail. So you go on about trying to save her, beat her, and that's the original PSP storyline. After you beat her and the girls leave. Now, at that point, before that final boss, you get to choose someone to knight. You learn this program that happened long ago called knighting, which upgrades one of the goals. You get this option to knight one goal, and you can get an individual ending for each of the original goals of the PSP game. But after you beat that boss, you get the Vita content where you go to save the instructor lady who you met at the beginning and the original final boss from being punished for what happened during your trial. Instead of leaving, you go and decide that you need to go help them. Going through an additional dungeon that covers their sins and backgrounds, you go and save them, knight them, and you go fight the new final boss. After that, you'll get a new ending where they all resurrect. Now the final bosses, I'd say both the original and the new final boss were a pretty good challenge for me, to be honest. But after that, you can enter a secret code that you learn off a sign at the end screen to access a super dungeon, which has a very basic layout. And I level grinded to about 70, and I'd say about 2 of them were the final, and one of the other, there were 4 bosses, super bosses you gotta kill to get to the main super boss. I'd say 2 of them were very death-threatening, while the other 3 were pretty meh. So 70 seems to be the ease cap, and after killing them all, everyone's pretty much 75 except one that was 74, I believe. So the level grinding for the end game for the Vita content is also made easier, because the 2 new characters' special field ability gives you 50% more experience and 50% extra CM from the next battle, which is very useful to use for any additional bosses you're going to fight with them, because you can make the leveling way faster that way too. But it is also a little repetitive, because you got to do it every single battle. Finish a battle, use both abilities, finish the battle, use both abilities. So it can be repetitive in that sense too, but it does make the grinding a lot less. I feel like the super bosses will kind of tacked on, but it's nice to have a little extra content still if you want to test out, if you want to limit yourself for that. So I'd say if you want a harder time with the super bosses, probably try to stay in the 60s with your goals. And also in the Vita content, just to point out too, after the original final boss of the PSP game, you get to knight all the goals. But I would like to point out, for those trying to get all the trophies, you do need all the singular endings that were part of the PSP storyline originally before you move on to the new end game in the Vita version. So you want to save before you knight a goal, and then you want to knight a goal, beat the PSP's original final boss, then see that ending, reload, pick another goal, and do it again with each goal of that. So aside from that, all the trophies will unlock as you progress through the game. The super boss in the final dungeon, that is also a trophy, so if you want to platinum it, you have to do the final super bosses as well. Overall though, I know it seems kind of skimpy on content and simplistic, but there's some charming about the game as well. I like a few of the characters. Some of them actually have very nice personalities, while some of them are a little bit odd too. Like I said, it is a very pervy looking game, so if that's not your kind of thing, then I would probably stay away from the game. But overall, if we're just talking about the gameplay, if you like old school grindy RPGs, this is probably up your alley. But that's about all I have to say on Criminal Goals. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below, and I will gladly get back to you. So rush on, my criminal goals, so you no longer delinquents in the proving grounds. Until next time.
私の作った朝ごはん感想だよ感想そうか明日も作ってあげるね